Well, you know me. I like my classic horror movies, and I have 4 of them right here. 2 of them from the 1970s and 2 of them from the 1980s. From the 70s, we have Lady Frankenstein and the Velvet Vampire. I believe they would probably be called Eurotrash type of films. One is about Frankenstein, and the other one is about a vampire. Not Dracula, but a vampire. Let's talk about that. Lady Frankenstein is about a lady, daughter of a Frankenstein. Probably not Victor Frankenstein, but of a Frankenstein. It's a Frankenstein story using the daughter of Frankenstein. And the daughter is just as much of a genius and morbidly curious in the undead and creating new life out of corpses and all of that stuff. But she wants to take it a step further. She wants to remove the brain of a crippled, brilliant scientist and put that brain into the body of an extremely good-looking man who is a little bit dim. So they remove the dim brain and put the brilliant man's brain in the body of a young, virile young man. And that's her plan, to create that, a superhuman with good looks and a smart person's brain, to fight the monster that her father created, the Frankenstein creature. The monster that her father created is out there wreaking havoc and all of that stuff. And so she creates this person to have them defeat the monster. And they do defeat the monster, but then her creation, who is cognizant, he can speak completely normal and eloquently because he's got the brain and memories of that scientist man whose brain she put into this man's body. And he realizes that this is not natural and this is not normal, and he should probably end Lady Frankenstein before anything gets worse. Now, of the 4 films in this collection, this is the only one that includes an extended edition. Now, the extended edition, extended cut of Lady Frankenstein basically is various found film reels containing footage that was not in the original theatrical release. There are various reels that were distributed all across, maybe on a cable channel or maybe in a private viewing, in a private collection. They have been unearthed, and they found these scenes and they've spliced them together into a single cut of the film, the longest and most complete version. And they do have a disclaimer saying that due to the deterioration of some of these film reels that they recovered to splice together into this film, the remastered version is going to look a lot better, and then the old poor condition scenes are going to look poor condition. And that's to be expected. So there are 2 types of added scenes. One of them feels like it's from a TV channel because it's got a little watermark at the top left corner, Sat 3 or something it said. And then the other one has subtitles in a foreign language that I didn't recognize it. But there's only one scene with the subtitles film reel version added in. And the most of the film is in the remastered, well conditioned version. You don't really need to watch the extended edition. There's nothing really lost. It's just added bonus scenes to make some scenes make more sense. But if you understand this story more or less, you don't really need them. But it's there if you want it. There's no extended cuts for the other 3 films, so they're not really needed. The Velvet Vampire is set in the 70s. It's about a couple driving out in the wilderness, in the desert, and they come across a lady out in the middle of nowhere, and the lady invites them to her home, and she tries to keep them there. She wants them to stay there. They eventually find the grave of her husband, who died 100 years ago, meaning she's a vampire. She's over 100 years old. She can hang out in the sun, so long as she wears a sun hat. Okay, whatever, but it's still a fun time. It's not as good as Dracula. It's not as good as most of the Dracula films, any of them. But it's still a decent vampire romp. It's overacted in times, but it's very entertaining. It's what you expect from this type of movie. It really is. Now, one of the most interesting is Time Walker here. This is from the 1980s, I believe 1981. It's about a college campus, an archaeologist professor who goes out to Egypt to finds a sealed-off portion of King Tut's tomb containing a sealed sarcophagus of a foreign dignitary. So they bring the sarcophagus back to the States, back to their campus, where they will unveil it because the dean wants to make a lot of money in marketing from this. So the archaeologist, who's a professor at that college, goes through looking at the sarcophagus. They remove the lid, they remove the inner lid, and they find a bunch of green dust all over the loosely wrapped mummy. And one of the students, who's a real piece of garbage, literally, I don't understand why these college films depict frats like this. It makes me despise frats. I hate the way these frat people act in these types of films. There's so many films where they are so obnoxious, they party, they're irresponsible, they're very academically delinquent. It's just, this guy goes into the sarcophagus room. He's the guy that has the x-ray machines. He's taking x-rays of the mummy. And he finds that there are some diamonds in the sarcophagus in a hidden compartment. So he pulls it out, but they're not diamonds, they're just little crystals. He steals them, and he tries to pawn them. But the pawn shop owner says these aren't real diamonds, they're fakes, they're worthless. So he tries to pawn them at various other jewelers and try to get them appraised, and everybody says they're worthless. So then he just starts pawning them off to fellow students at the college for money. He literally is just a scoundrel. A scoundrel. Stealing 2,000-year-old relics. I despise this kid. I despise him. Anyways, the professor looks at the green dust and finds that it's fungus. It's a type of fungus. And the radiation revived this 2,000-year dormant fungus, and it reactivates. And it's a sort of cannibalizing fungus. If you touch it, it will spread onto your skin and start to eat the living tissue on your body. Will consume very quickly the living tissue. So the only way to stop it is to amputate the limb that touched the fungus before it gets any further, which is what they had to do to a couple of the students who touched this green fungus. The mummy even gets up as well, and the mummy goes off on a quest to find the crystals that this frat piece of trash stole. So he's trying to recover that, and everybody he comes into contact with, everybody this mummy touches, gets infected with the fungus because he's covered in this stuff, right? And then we learn the story that this mummy was a foreign dignitary who didn't look human at all, and the pharaoh, King Tut, and his servants believed that this was a god from the heavens, a deity come down to earth. So they wanted this deity to meet with King Tut, who is their deity, so as to say, because the deity in mortal flesh, that's the Egyptian faith, lore, culture, and all that stuff. So the King Tut meets with the foreign dignitary, and they shake hands, and then King Tut dies of the fungus, and all of the servants who touched the dignitary also start to die of the fungus. So they seal everybody who touched this fungus in a tomb. They seal this dignitary alive, mummified alive, in this sarcophagus to seal him away so that he doesn't bother anybody else or spread this plague that they believed is a plague. And then at the very end of the film, the most interesting thing happens. This isn't a mummy at all. It's an alien. Literally an alien. He uses the crystals to revive himself. The wrappings fall off of his body to reveal he's an alien. A member of the Blue Man group, basically. And so the alien grabs the archaeologist's hand, who doesn't get infected by the fungus, by the way, and both of them teleport away, probably to the aliens' ship, where they go to see the other aliens. The archaeologist is effectively abducted, and at the end of the movie we see "To Be Continued," even though there was never a sequel because this film was not financially successful. Sequels don't happen unless a film is financially successful, at least in some way, shape, or form. If this film cost $5 million to make, it needs to make at least $10 million to warrant a sequel, so it probably didn't make that much money. It probably didn't make that much at all. Sad. It's a good film. I really enjoyed it, probably more than everything else on this set. The last one is Grotesque. Grotesque is a late 80s film about two people, Linda Blair's in it, and they go to a cabin in the woods, and they meet a bunch of Mad Max villain rejects, a bunch of Mad Max punkers, probably the Warriors, more like. The Warriors is a 70s film. The Road Warrior came out a couple of years after this, so it could be based off the Warriors too, but hey, the Road Warrior is very popular as well, so it could be either or. These punkers are just garbage. All of them are garbage people, and their personalities are, you look at a couple of them, the way they talk, the way they look, they're twitching all about, they're probably on something. So these guys, these punkers, chase after Linda Blair and her friend as they go to her family's house. Her father is a horror prop maker who used to work in Hollywood. He's retired now, but he's got to keep on most of the props that he created. And the story is that she's a rich person. The father is a rich man who's got a lot of money from Hollywood, but no, the actual reality is he's just got a bunch of props, and they're probably useless, worthless, unless in the hands of the right collector. So these punkers are going in here looking for money, and they don't find anything, so they kill the whole family. It's very sad. It is. Linda Blair manages to escape, but then she gets taken out eventually later on in the film. And then the second act hits, and we learn that Linda Blair has a brother who is malformed, who is a mutant, grotesque, if you will. And he goes after all of the punkers and takes them out one by one till only two of them remain. But by the time, before this mutant can take out the last of the punkers and save the day, save his family, avenge his family, the cops arrive and they think that the mutant is the killer, so they kill the mutant. Then we learn that Linda Blair's uncle is actually the father of this mutant, and so he captures the final two punkers and takes them and malforms them through some mutilation surgery to really mess them up. And that's where it ends. The first half of the film is not the best to me personally. I'm not a fan of these punkers and the way they act. It's overacting and it's just over the top, but it's not entertaining to me. It's just not. It works in Mad Max. It doesn't work here. It really doesn't. And there's a lot of films where these guys act like this, and it's not my thing. But the second half of the film, as soon as that mutant brother comes out and starts mowing these punkers down, that's when the film gets good. The ending twist is also really good. Overall, this 4-film set is a good time, especially if you're a fan of classic horror movies. If you're a fan of 70s Eurotrash and you want to see some gothic horror in the 70s, then Lady Frankenstein is that exact type of gothic horror made in the 70s. Because back in the 30s and 40s, there was a censorship board where they wouldn't let you do 90% of the stuff that they get away with in Lady Frankenstein. There's so much gore and really bloody effects, removed limbs, what else? Oh yeah, skin, lots of skin is shown. You know, they wouldn't let you do that in the 30s. Well, they did in the 70s. Oh, they did in the 70s. So if you're a fan of gothic horror, you want to see something unhinged, 30s unhinged, Lady Frankenstein is for you. The Velvet Vampire is not really gothic horror-ish, because it's not set back in the olden days like Lady Frankenstein, but it has that same aesthetic. It's got a vampire in it. It's still fun. Time Walker's just a good movie all around, and Grotesque is just okay. Either way, I would recommend this.